The Galactic Consortium ship Luminary emerged from faster-than-light travel, its sleek, elongated form slicing through the emptiness of space like a blade through still water. The transition from superluminal speeds to normal space was a delicate process, one that never failed to elicit a moment of awe from those who experienced it. A low, resonant hum reverberated through the ship's hull, the sound a comforting reminder of the technological marvels that powered this vessel through the stars. As the ship's momentum slowed, the eerie stillness of space enveloped them once again. The Luminary came to a stop at the edge of an uncharted solar system, its advanced sensors scanning the surroundings with a precise and calculated method. From the cockpit, Captain THX watched the stars stretch infinitely in all directions, their cold brilliance accentuating the vastness of the void. This was no ordinary corner of the galaxy. Beyond the hull of the ship, the darkness seemed even deeper, the silence almost profound, as though the very fabric of space held its breath in anticipation. The Luminary lingered motionless, its sensors focused on the distant world that hovered just beyond its reach. Captain THX, a member of the Zur species, sat poised in the command chair, his fluid gelatinous form shimmering in the dim light of the control room. His body reflected a rich violet hue that danced softly in the ambient glow. The quiet elegance of his alien form, with its smooth, translucent surface, was a stark contrast to the harsh sterility of the ship. THX had navigated the farthest reaches of the galaxy, charting unknown stars and discovering lost civilizations, but this mission was unlike any other. The Consortium, a coalition of some of the galaxy's most advanced species, rarely ventured into the uncharted, unknown corners of space. Yet recent intelligence had flagged this particular sector as unique. A small, isolated planet in the system had developed a level of technology that defied the Consortium's understanding, without any outside influence. The idea was as thrilling as it was troubling. THX knew the danger of uncharted territories, and this planet, so far removed from the pulse of galactic life, was both a mystery and a potential enigma. It could hold answers to questions never before asked, or it could harbor threats beyond imagination. THX leaned forward in his chair, the weight of his thoughts pressing on him. This discovery, he murmured to himself, it could be everything or nothing. He felt a mixture of exhilaration and deep unease. For a civilization to have reached this level without the aid of the broader galaxy's resources was a rare occurrence. But that very isolation brought with it the fear of the unknown. What had they developed that the galaxy had not seen? And more importantly, what would they do when faced with the first visitors from across the stars? "Report, Commander Yellen," THX ordered, his voice cutting through the stillness of the bridge. His tone was sharp, businesslike, but underneath it lay a current of uncertainty. Commander Yellen, a creature of elegant spindly limbs and a shimmering, undulating membrane, was absorbed in the data flooding in from the science station. His many eyes blinked rapidly, processing multiple streams of information before meeting THX's gaze. "Sir, we've identified several artificial structures orbiting the third planet in the system," Yellen said, his voice steady, though tinged with curiosity. "They appear to be a mix of habitation modules and defensive installations. However, we're not detecting any faster-than-light travel signatures from them." The news caught THX's attention immediately. A species capable of building such an elaborate infrastructure, habitation modules and defense systems no less, but without the ability to travel faster than light? That was highly unusual, even for the farthest reaches of galactic exploration. Most species that had reached such technological milestones were already well on their way to mastering FTL travel, or at the very least, experimenting with it. To lack such capabilities was almost unheard of. "No faster-than-light travel?" THX mused aloud. His mind began to race as the possibilities unfolded before him. "This is unusual." "Indeed, Captain," Yellen replied, his voice betraying a hint of intrigue. "The technological complexity of their orbital systems suggests a highly developed society, and yet they appear to be trapped in a technological stasis, unable or unwilling to take the leap into faster-than-light travel. It's an anomaly." THX's violet skin rippled slightly, reflecting the moment of deep contemplation. "Interesting," he said, his voice trailing off, but then quickly adding, "Have they detected us?" Yellen's long, Pointed fingers hovered over the holographic controls as he examined the data more closely. His membrane shimmered with concentration. "It's uncertain, Captain," he answered, his voice measured. "Given their technology, they should be able to detect any ship entering their system. However, there's no sign that they've made contact with us yet. Still, their communications network is exceptionally active. It seems like they're on high alert. They may have already noticed our arrival." The news did little to ease THX's mind. The very fact that the humans, or whatever species inhabited this planet, were on high alert suggested that they were no strangers to the possibility of danger. It seemed they had long been preparing for something, though what that something was remained a mystery. THX shifted slightly in his chair, his gelatinous form rippling under the pressure of his thoughts. "Fascinating," he muttered again. "Their level of readiness suggests more than just technological development. It's as if they're waiting for something." He turned to Lyra, the communications officer, her face impassive as she watched the incoming data. "Lyra, prepare the message from the consortium. Let them know we come in peace, to explore and learn. We'll announce our presence in a way they will understand." As Lyra began transmitting the prepared message, THX found himself lost in thought. Something about the situation felt wrong. This wasn't the usual excitement or curiosity that greeted first contact. These humans were on high alert, prepared for something, perhaps for someone. It could be their own history, a past marked by conflict or isolation that had hardened them into a race of survivors. Or perhaps it was something even more profound, something that THX couldn't quite put his finger on yet. He could feel the weight of the unknown pressing on him. As the message was sent, THX stared out of the view screen at the distant planet below. It was beautiful, almost too beautiful. A pristine, untouched world with oceans and forests that seemed to sing a song of life. Yet in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was staring at a fragile, dangerous thing. A world that had grown up alone, and perhaps would be unwilling to share its secrets with anyone from the stars. As the luminary drifted in the vast darkness, waiting for a response, THX couldn't help but wonder, what had these humans developed in isolation? And were they truly ready to meet the galaxy? Or would they fight to preserve their way of life? The answers, he knew, would come soon enough. The response came swiftly, more urgent than expected. It crackled through the communication channels, an unexpected intensity coloring the voice on the other end. "This is Commander Aaron Chen of Earth's Orbital Defense. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose immediately." The sharpness of the voice caught THX off guard, making his violet skin ripple involuntarily. It was a rare occurrence for a species to respond with such immediacy, especially given the consortium's reputation for peaceful exploration. This wasn't the tentative, cautious tone he was used to hearing from a civilization first encountering alien life. No, this was firm, authoritative, and almost aggressive. THX's central eye widened slightly as he adjusted to the unexpected shift in tone. The message from Earth wasn't what he had anticipated. It was more of a demand than a query, the kind usually reserved for dealing with threats rather than peaceful emissaries. "Commander Chen," THX began, his voice steady despite the unsettling nature of the response. His body, usually fluid and calm, betrayed a ripple of unease. "I am Captain THX of the Galactic Consortium, aboard the Luminary. We come as explorers and diplomats, seeking to initiate first contact with your species and to establish peaceful relations." There was a brief pause, and THX felt the weight of the silence. It was long enough to make him feel that Earth was still unsure about how to proceed, whether to engage or reject the overture entirely. The response came back, colder now, more guarded. "Captain THX," the voice of Chen replied, laced with a calm firmness. "While we acknowledge your peaceful intentions, your unannounced arrival has placed us on high alert. You are requested to remain in your current position while our representatives discuss the appropriate next steps." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Luminary's bridge filled with an unnerving silence. THX's crew exchanged glances, their limbs flickering with anxiety as they processed the unexpected turn of events. Even Lyra, the usually composed communications officer, leaned toward him with a subtle unease. "They're unusually guarded, Captain," she whispered, her voice betraying the concern she felt. Most pre-FTL civilizations are excited, or at least curious, when encountering alien life. But these humans, they're treating us like a threat. HX let out a slow breath, his mind turning over the implications of what had just occurred. He had expected caution, perhaps even some skepticism, but this response was something more, something deeper. Earth wasn't simply reacting out of fear. There was an underlying tension, a readiness to respond, as if they had dealt with such situations before. It was as if they knew exactly how to handle an alien presence, as if they had been prepared for it for some time. "Indeed," THX replied, his voice low, his eyes narrowing slightly in thought. "It's possible their history has made them cautious. From what I've read, humans are known for their resilience, their ability to adapt and survive even in the most extreme circumstances. But this level of wariness in first contact, this is unlike anything I've encountered before." His words trailed off as he turned back to the view screen, staring at the distant planet below. The silence stretched on, and THX couldn't shake the feeling that Earth, despite its technological advances, was far more capable and far more dangerous than anyone had realized. This wasn't just a primitive world, it was a world that had learned to defend itself, to stand firm in its sovereignty. The luminary remained in orbit, suspended in a tense standoff. The crew continued to monitor the ship's systems, watching for any signs of further communication, but the sense of foreboding grew. Something about this encounter felt different. THX's mind raced with possibilities, each one more complex than the last. The more he considered Earth's response, the more he realized that these humans were not as unprepared as the consortium had initially thought. They were ready for this moment, and that unnerved him. After several hours of tense silence, the message finally came through. But it was not the friendly exchange that THX had hoped for. This time, the transmission was not from the commanding officer, but from someone far more significant, President Alex Kane of Earth. His face appeared on the view screen, calm yet resolute, a figure who radiated both confidence and caution. His expression gave nothing away, though there was a quiet intensity about him that seemed to speak volumes. The stark difference between his demeanor and that of Commander Chen was palpable. Where Chen had been defensive and sharp, Kane was measured, composed, calculated. Yet there was a certain authority in his presence that immediately commanded respect. "Captain THX of the Luminary," President Kane began, his voice unwavering, with no hint of fear or uncertainty. "We do not seek conquest, nor do we wish to incite further rebellion among your worlds. But we stand firm in our commitment to self-determination, for ourselves and for those who seek it alongside us." For the first time, THX felt the full weight of humanity's resolve. The strength behind Kane's words was undeniable. Earth wasn't just defending its territory or its people, it was defending a principle. The very essence of human identity seemed wrapped up in their commitment to remain free, to govern their own future without outside interference. THX had dealt with many species, some powerful, some timid, but none had ever expressed such unshakable conviction in their right to self-determination. As Kane continued, THX found himself listening more intently. There was no fear in Kane's words, nor was there any hesitation. These humans had endured hardships, yet they stood resolute in the face of an empire much older and more powerful than their own. "We propose a new alliance," Kane continued, his voice carrying the weight of history and hope, one based on respect, mutual aid, and shared growth. "We do not demand that the consortium dissolve, but we ask for a fundamental change in your approach, one that respects the sovereignty of every world under your influence." The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. The entire bridge was silent, each crew member processing what they had just heard. THX remained motionless, his gaze fixed on Kane's face as if searching for any hint of duplicity. There was none. Instead, what he saw was something altogether unexpected. A people who had grown accustomed to standing on their own, a species whose resolve had not been broken by millennia of struggle. Earth wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting for something much bigger. It was offering a vision of a new way forward, a way that challenged everything the consortium had built. The very foundation of the consortium's power, its dominance, its control, was rooted in the submission of weaker species. But here was a species that would not yield, not even in the face of overwhelming force. The message continued to reverberate in THX's mind, the implications settling over him like a weight. Earth wasn't simply asking for survival or protection. They were asking for something far more radical, a seat at the table, an opportunity to shape the future of the galaxy, not as subjects, but as equal partners. For the first time in his long career, THX felt a surge of uncertainty. The galaxy he had known, the one in which the consortium held dominion over the stars, was not as unshakable as he had once believed. He could sense the shifting tides of power, the rumblings of change that could not be ignored. The very principles that had guided the consortium for millennia were now being challenged by a species that had only just begun to reach its potential. In that moment, THX realized that this encounter would not be like any other. The humans had shown him a new possibility, one that transcended the simple binary of conquer or submit. They were offering a third path, one that required trust, cooperation, and respect. And he wasn't sure the consortium would be willing to accept it. The question was no longer whether Earth could survive, it was whether the consortium could evolve. The tension between the consortium and Earth escalated with every passing moment. What had begun as a cautious first contact had transformed into a full-blown standoff. The human response was becoming more defiant, more resolute with each exchange, and the luminary's sensors were picking up signals that indicated Earth was preparing for something far greater than anyone had anticipated. As THX and his crew watched the unfolding events, it became clear that Earth was not retreating into fear or confusion, as most pre-FTL civilizations would do when confronted with a superior force. Instead, they fortified their defenses, and the luminary detected a massive buildup of military power in orbit around their planet. Earth had not just prepared for contact, they were preparing for war. They had braced themselves for something bigger than first contact. They were ready for confrontation. The consortium's fleet, led by the luminary, moved into position. Their primary objective was clear, a demonstration of power to establish the consortium's superiority and intimidate Earth into submission. THX crew braced themselves, but there was an underlying uncertainty gnawing at the captain. The humans had made their stance clear. They would not yield. This was not going to be an easy mission, and it felt for the first time that something was slipping out of their control. As the first salvo of plasma fire was launched toward Earth's orbital defenses, something unexpected occurred. A powerful energy shield surrounded Earth's satellites, absorbing the consortium's attack with ease. The plasma beam, usually devastating against any form of defense, simply vanished as it made contact with the shield. "What in the void?" TX murmured in disbelief. His central eye widened in surprise, and his normally composed form rippled in shock. The humans had prepared defenses far beyond what any pre-FTL civilization should possess. Their technological capability was not just advanced, it was otherworldly. "Captain," Commander Yellen reported, his voice laced with confusion, "their satellites are emitting a form of energy shield, one far stronger than anything we anticipated. It's like nothing we've ever encountered before." THX's mind raced as he processed the information. The situation was quickly slipping into unfamiliar territory. The humans weren't simply defending themselves. They were not only prepared for a confrontation, they were prepared to fight back. And that was something the consortium had never faced before. As if in response to the consortium's attack, Earth's countermeasures kicked in. Missiles streaked toward the luminary, kinetic projectiles fired from the planet's surface, and laser pulses began to rain down on the fleet. The rapid intensity of the assault forced the luminary to execute evasive maneuvers. The ship's shields groaned under the pressure, and THX could feel the vibrations throughout his body as the ship twisted and turned, attempting to avoid the incoming onslaught. This wasn't just a defensive action, this was a counterattack. The humans weren't simply trying to survive, they were retaliating. They had prepared for this moment, and their response was far more coordinated and effective than anything THX had imagined. "Shields holding at 70%, Captain," Kint, the weapons officer, reported, his voice tense. "But they're not relenting. The humans are sustaining their attack. They're not backing down." The tension on the bridge was palpable. Each crew member was working furiously to keep up with the constant barrage coming from Earth. The situation was rapidly becoming more dangerous than THX had ever anticipated. He had faced many adversaries during his career as an explorer, but none had responded with such ferocity. The Consortium's fleet, so often the unquestioned rulers of space, now found itself on the back foot. Their technological superiority meant nothing when faced with a species that fought not just for survival, but for freedom. THX stood motionless for a moment, processing the weight of the situation. The Luminary had always been a symbol of power, an emblem of the Consortium's reach across the galaxy. But here, in Earth's orbit, that power was beginning to look fragile. Humanity had shown an unrelenting spirit, a will to defend its sovereignty at any cost. This was no longer just a fight for territory or control. It was a fight for something much deeper. Earth wasn't just protecting its world. It was defending an ideal that was beginning to spread like wildfire, not only among the humans but across the galaxy. This was a stand for independence, for the right to exist without the shadow of the Consortium looming over it. As the battle raged on, the Luminary found itself pushed to the brink. The humans' defenses were holding strong, their weapons relentless and precisely targeted. Earth's systems seemed to grow more adaptive with each passing moment, as though they were anticipating the Consortium's every move. THX realized, with growing dread, that the situation had taken a drastic turn for the worse. It wasn't just that Earth was capable of defending itself. It was that Earth was forcing the Consortium to rethink its entire strategy. The humans had gone from being a species to subdue to a species that had shattered the Consortium's assumptions about their place in the galaxy. The Luminary's shields flared bright as another wave of attacks landed on the ship, knocking out some of the outer systems. The battle was no longer just a demonstration of the Consortium's power. It was now a genuine conflict, one that could spiral out of control in an instant. THX's thoughts raced as he considered the implications. The Consortium had been forced into a position where it no longer held the upper hand. This was a reality he wasn't prepared for. Earth, for all its perceived primitiveness, had proven that it was more than just a small, unimportant world. It had fought back against the might of the Consortium with a strength THX had never imagined possible. A crackle over the comms broke his thoughts as a familiar voice, Commander Aaron Chen, came through again. This time, her voice was even more resolute, even more commanding than before. "To the Galactic Consortium forces," she said, her words cutting through the static. "You have underestimated Earth's resolve and capabilities. This is your final warning. Cease your hostile actions and withdraw from our system, or you will face the full measure of our defenses. We will not surrender our world." HX's heart sank as he listened to the words, and a cold shiver ran down his gelatinous form. This was no longer just a defensive action. Earth was declaring its independence. They were willing to fight not only for their survival, but for the very right to determine their own future. A species that had been assumed to be on the brink of submission had now turned the tables, forcing the Consortium into retreat, or worse, open conflict. For the first time, THX questioned the purpose of his mission. The orders had been clear: force Earth into submission, show them the power of the Consortium. But now, Earth had made its position abundantly clear. They would not submit. They would resist with everything they had. A wave of uncertainty washed over THX. He had seen many worlds bend to the will of the Consortium. He had been trained to believe that resistance was futile when faced with overwhelming power. Yet here, in Earth's orbital space, those beliefs were beginning to crumble. Earth had risen in defiance, and THX now found himself on the verge of a decision he never thought he would have to make. Would he continue with the mission? Would he follow orders and force Earth into compliance? Or would he acknowledge that the galaxy was changing, and that perhaps, for the first time, the Consortium's vision of galactic control was being challenged by something stronger: humanity's fierce will to be free? The failure of the Consortium's assault on Earth sent ripples of shock through the ranks of its military leaders. What was meant to be a swift demonstration of power had instead turned into a rout. The Luminary and the rest of the fleet began to retreat, the realization settling in that Earth was no longer a world to be subdued. It had become an adversary that could not be ignored. But the defeat was not just a setback for the consortium. It was a signal to the galaxy. Earth's victory was a testament to their resilience, their spirit, and their determination to protect their sovereignty. It was a spark that would ignite a fire across multiple systems. Planets that had once been under the yoke of the consortium, oppressed and controlled for centuries, began to see the possibility of something different. Earth had shown them that resistance was not only possible, it was inevitable. As the Luminary and the other consortium ships pulled back from Earth's orbit, the tide of the battle shifted. Earth's forces, newly empowered by their victory and the support of neighboring planets, launched a massive counteroffensive. The consortium, once the dominant military force in the galaxy, found itself on the defensive. Ships from planets previously oppressed by the consortium now joined Earth's cause, their fleets striking at consortium positions with precision and fury. THX stood on the bridge of the Luminary, his eyes fixed on the view screen as the battle unfolded. What had once seemed like an inevitable victory for the consortium was now unraveling before him. The once mighty fleet, composed of some of the galaxy's most powerful ships, was struggling to hold its ground. The sheer force of the human resistance and their newfound alliances was overwhelming. For the first time, THX could see the writing on the wall. The consortium had underestimated the strength of Earth's resolve. This was no longer just about a single planet, it was about an entire movement, one that spanned across systems and sectors. Earth had ignited a revolution, and the flames of that revolution were spreading faster than the consortium could contain. As the Luminary began to retreat, pulling back from Earth's orbit, THX found himself looking back at the small blue planet. Earth had not only survived the consortium's assault, they had thrived. They had shown the galaxy that even the most powerful of empires could be challenged, and that no species was beyond the reach of liberation. Earth had become more than just a planet. It had become a symbol of freedom, of defiance, and of hope. The world that had once been considered insignificant was now at the heart of a galactic movement. Earth had reminded the galaxy that the will to be free was stronger than the most formidable military might. In the wake of Earth's stunning victory, the consortium found itself in turmoil. The once unshakable empire was now fractured, its power base crumbling under the weight of uprisings and rebellions. The fear that had long held the galaxy in check was beginning to dissolve, and a new era was dawning. One where the balance of power was no longer in the hands of a single oppressive force, but shared among those who sought freedom and equality. The growing unrest spread like wildfire. Systems that had once been under the consortium's iron grip began to question its authority. The rebellion sparked by Earth's defiance had inspired countless civilizations, who now saw the possibility of a future where they could stand tall, free from the shadow of the consortium. The galaxy had been shaken to its core, and the once proud empire of the consortium now found itself in the precarious position of having to confront the reality that its power was no longer absolute. For THX, the reality of the situation was both sobering and liberating. Once a loyal officer of the consortium, he now found himself at the forefront of a new movement. A movement that sought to build a galaxy where every species could thrive without the looming threat of domination. His role had shifted from that of an enforcer of control to a participant in a broader cause, one that transcended the consortium's narrow vision of order. As President Alex Kane and Commander Aaron Chen led Earth's representatives in negotiations with the remaining consortium leadership, THX stood silently among them. Earth's ideals of freedom, unity, and mutual respect were beginning to reshape the very fabric of galactic politics. The newly formed Galactic Alliance was taking shape, one where every species, regardless of their history or size, would have a voice in determining their future. The alliance was not a conquest. It was a cooperative effort to build a future based on shared growth, respect, and peace. The transition would not be easy. The old order was not quick to fall, and there were still factions within the consortium that clung desperately to the old ways. But the winds of change were undeniable. The old guard of the consortium, once confident in their ability to control and suppress, were now forced to reckon with a new reality. Earth had led the charge, but they were not alone. The voices of countless species, Those who had suffered under the consortium's rule for generations were joining the call for change. For THX, the journey from enforcer of galactic order to ambassador of peace had been swift and unexpected. But as he watched the negotiations unfold, he knew that the future of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the consortium. The time had come for a new chapter in galactic history, one where unity, self-determination, and compassion would replace fear, control, and domination. Earth's victory had been more than just a military triumph. It had been a revolution. And as THX stood among the representatives of the Galactic Alliance, he understood the true power of humanity. It wasn't just in their technological advancements or their military strength, it was in their spirit, their unwavering commitment to freedom and justice. Earth had not just fought for itself, it had fought for the galaxy. THX knew that the galaxy was entering a new era. It was an era where the pursuit of freedom and self-determination would guide the course of history for generations to come. A new dawn had broken, and the Luminary, once a symbol of the consortium's power, was now part of a galaxy-wide movement that had the power to change everything. The future, THX realized, was no longer a matter of conquest and submission. It was a matter of cooperation, respect, and shared growth. Earth had shown the galaxy the way forward, and THX could only hope that the rest of the galaxy would rise to meet it.